I was just wondering how many stories have been told here in front of the fire at the Ysgwrn. And which stories would they have been? I'm sure that this next story would have been one of them. It's a story from the parish of Llanfachredd. And high up in the parish, there is a farm called Rhiwfelen. The son of the farm had the duties of being a shepherd. And one day, while he was out with his sheep, he heard a crying sound. Not a loud sound at all, but a quiet weeping of someone in distress. And he followed the sound until he came to a big clump of rushes. And there, sitting amongst the rushes, was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. And he asked her what was wrong, and she became very frightened. And he said that he wouldn't hurt her, that he wanted to help her. And she stopped crying and she smiled at him. And she explained that she had lost her way and she didn't know where she was and she wanted to go home, but she didn't know how to get there. And he told her not to worry. He told her that he knew every inch of the area and that he was able to help her to find her way home. And she smiled. And as she smiled, he fell completely head over heels in love with this most beautiful woman. And as they were smiling at each other, Adra, rwan, atitha, cadw at ei draw. Ti'n dallt? Home, now, and you, keep away. And Rhiwfelen's son watched as the most beautiful woman he had ever seen walked away and disappeared into the next valley. He was heartbroken. He didn't know if he'd ever see her again, but he lived in hope. And day after day, week after week, he would visit the same clump of rushes, hoping that he would find her there. Until one day, he did. She was there, smiling at him. And he ran up to her and they embraced. And they kissed. And they kissed again. And again. Until, Adra, rwan, home, now. Atitha, cadw a draw, keep away. And once again, he saw the most beautiful woman in the world to him disappear with her father into the next valley. He didn't even know her name, let alone where she lived. But he kept hoping that he would see her again. And so he would visit the clump of rushes day after day, week after week, month after month, until one day she was there with her father. And the father explained that his daughter had become very, very depressed and very, very, very unhappy. That all she wanted was to marry the shepherd that she had met here in Rhiwfelen. The young man couldn't believe what he was hearing. And he said, of course, that he would marry her. That he loved her with all his heart. And they smiled at each other and they embraced. And the father said to the young man, you look after her. And any children that come from the marriage, you must keep safe. You must keep them away from iron. Do you understand? And the young man agreed. And he said, of course that he would keep her safe, and he would look after any of the children. Of course he would. And he would also make sure that his wife never came in contact with any iron. And they both watched as her father disappeared down into the next valley. The monks down at Abbati Cymer married them and blessed the marriage, and they lived a happy and fruitful life. A house full of children, and a lot of laughter and singing and dancing. And one day they wanted to go down to Llanfachredd. It was Gwyl Mabsant, the Saint's Day, and there was a big festival in the village. They needed a horse and cart to take everyone down. And he went to the field to catch the horse, but the horse didn't want to be caught. And he was getting angrier by the minute. He was getting very, very, very annoyed. And he was getting so annoyed that he threw the bridle at the very moment that his wife, Bella, came through the gates, and the bridle flew through the air and struck his wife Bella on the shoulder, and she screamed. She screamed the most ear-piercing scream that he'd ever heard. And he rushed towards her and he got hold of her and he said, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. And she said, you haven't hurt me. The bridle didn't hurt me. But the iron has touched me. And I must leave. And within 10 minutes, her family, her tylwyth, had arrived to take her home with them. And he watched as Bella, the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, walked away from him with her family, with her tylwyth, and disappeared down into the next valley. And he raised the children all on his own. And when they grew up, they had their own families, and those families had other families. And they do say that's when the young men of Trawsfynydd here and the young men of Llanfachredd used to go down to Dolgellau on a Saturday night in the good old days. They say that the young men of Dolgellau would taunt the young men of Trawsfynydd and Llanfachredd, and they would fight very often because they kept taunting them by calling them y Belisiaid, because their great, many great grandmother was Bella, the most beautiful woman that the Son of Rhiwfelen had ever seen.